Have you ever been on a date and next day you texted her and she ghosted you because you absolutely fucked up the date? Well, in this video, I'm gonna explain to my client exactly what the steps are, the system for a successful date. So if you wanna absolutely kill it in your next date, this is the video for you, baby. All right, so the first thing is logistics. When it comes to dates, logistics is so important, and we talked about this before. You need to do your homework, you need to do your research, right? You need to know exactly where you're taking her. The last thing you want to do is, turn up to a place that you have no idea where it is, what it looks like, you've never been there before, and you go sit down and you're uncomfortable because, there's noises around you, you don't like the environment, the girl doesn't like the environment, and that's the worst way to start it off. Yeah, and then with logistics, it's extremely important that you've been there before. Now, we're in Dubai right now, and obviously, this is a new place for us, but you've been on a few instant dates in, that Fashion Avenue place, right? And you know that place really well. Now, if you land a date tomorrow, you're not gonna choose some random place, right? You're gonna choose a date location that you've been to before. It's kind of like that home advantage in sports. In sports you have that home advantage where you're more likely to do well because of that, the home atmosphere, right? Because you're familiar with it. And in dating is exactly the same. Yeah, so now you're in the date location, right? It's really important to choose the right seats. So the last thing you want to do is choose a seating where you're both sitting opposite, because research has proven that when you're sitting opposite, you're less likely to build that connection. You're not even talking about a date, right? You're talking about just like even in a business sense, right? Even in terms of business, it's actually the worst way to connect with someone because it's like too formal, isn't it? Like I remember I was reading this article about how to do deals in business, and they were like, what they found is if the person was sitting next to you on a sofa, they're more likely to do a deal with you than they were opposite. Obviously, you're the expert in business, but in dating, it's even more important, right? In business, well, I guess it's kind of similar, right? Because what you're trying to do is build rapport. That's what you're doing on a date as well. And, oh, there's a stunner there, bro. So, so that's the thing. You want to start off with your best foot forward, right? If you don't do your homework, right? If you go on a date without choosing the right location, without choosing the right seats, now you're kind of in recovery mode, right? You have to entertain her. You have to, be the one that's kind of chasing, which, as we spoke about, dates are one that you want to get her to chase you, right? That's the frame on a date. It's about you flipping the script and getting her to invest, right? So the first thing, when you get to the first location, you have to be quite low energy. This is extremely key because you've probably noticed, right? When you see a guy on a first date, he's really excited, right? He's landed a date after like 1 year of trying, and he's like, all right, this is this is my luck. I have to put in everything, right? I have to really turn up. And what guys don't realize is that energy is the worst way to connect with someone, because you're kind of trying to impress her, and even, a lot of guys do it with words, but even if you don't do it with words, even if you're not like saying, oh, I drive a Ferrari and, I live in this building and stuff like that, it comes across in your energy, right? Like you're too excited to be on a date with her, and then she just sees through it. And it's kind of like, what I was saying, like when me and you are hanging out, or when you're hanging out with your best friend, it's just kind of like this chill energy. You know, it's like this, you know, two people just connecting with each other, getting to know each other, right? If you're getting to know a guy, you're not going to turn up super excited, put him on a pedestal, right? And this is one thing that guys really fuck up. So you want to turn up to the date with low energy, right? And by low energy, I don't mean like you're tired or something, but energy that is kind of like a connection energy, right? You know, like in the approach where first you need to go in really high energy, like a lot of enthusiasm, and then you keep dropping it, right? Because you need to connect and build comfort. Now on the date, the energy is even lower than that, right? The energy is so low that she starts to do the work, right? She feels this kind of void where she's like, oh, I need to actually, you know, do the work here, right? And that's the best position to be in, because when you're in that position, now she's investing in you, right? And as we said, when a girl invests in you, she wants a return on her investment. And this is really important because, you know, if she doesn't care about the interaction, if she doesn't care about the date, well, you know, if she walks away and never texts you again, she hasn't lost anything, right? And then the other aspect is you want her to chase you, right? You want to be different to the other guys, because the other guys, you know, they're going to come and have this kind of mindset where it's like, oh, I need to win her over. But the thing is, you've already won her over, right, in the approach. Now you just need to relax and let her do the work, let her invest in you. Yeah, so in terms of investment, at worst, it should be equal, 50-50. But ideally, what you want to do is get it to 80-20, where she's investing 80% of the time and you're talking 20% of the time. When I say investment, I mean, you know, who's talking the most, right? So, yeah, if you can get her to talk a lot, that's when, kind of like that girl yesterday, right? She was investing a lot, and that's why she liked you so much. She was, you know, she was just giving you compliment after compliment, because she's probably never been to a date like that, where the guy just like didn't want to impress her and gave her all this space for her to chase, right? So that's the thing, you know, like when sometimes you go on a date and then you're doing most of the talking and they don't really invest that much, they don't really talk. Well, it's because you're not giving her space. That's the thing. So the best way to actually give them a space is just to shut up, right? You know that you know where there's like a pause in the conversation and you don't go, oh, so, do you know what I mean? So that's where you just don't say anything and you wait for her to say something, right? When the conversation naturally dies, usually what do guys do? So, because they don't want that awkward pause, right? Because they feel like, oh, that awkward pause means the date's not going well. But actually, that's something that you want to have on the date, right? Because it builds that tension, and the tension is really important, especially if you look into her eyes, you know, with a little bit of a sexual eye contact. That's even better, man. So that's the other thing I was going to say as well. Tension is quite good on a date, and you know, obviously, you know, here's me kind of saying, oh, you got to be low energy and there's going to be connection, but then there has to be that tension as well, right? That what we call that seduction energy, right? So to describe that, it's, you know, you're talking really slowly, you're talking slow. It's kind of like in that flirtatious energy, right? You've got that good eye contact. Now, what you don't want to do is just be in that mode all the time, right? You want to do what we call it on and off. Just like a great movie, like when you think about a great movie, it's like an action movie, right? It's action, and then what happens? It's like a bit of talking in the movie, right? Like there's a lot of gunfire, like tanks and stuff, and then they shoot the scene where it's just like two people talking. Then they go back into the action. So it's kind of like that on or off effect. If you watch a movie from the beginning to the end, it's just all like guns and tanks and stuff like that. It's quite boring because it's predictable. You're like, oh, well, you know exactly what's coming next. So just like, our building in Dubai, you want to be unpredictable, right? You want to be unpredictable. And by unpredictable, what I mean is to be on and off. So one moment, yeah, you're maybe, like right here, we're next to the fountain. You're looking at the fountain, you're just chilling, you got that low energy kind of vibe. The next minute you go into that, like seduction, that romantic energy, right? And then you look into eyes, maybe you get a bit closer. Proximity is always good to tense it up, to increase the tension, that sexual energy, right? So you get a bit closer, and then you back off again, maybe check out the fountain. So it's that on and off. It's really important to do on dates. Yeah, so now let's talk about the topics you want to talk about in the conversation. You want to stay away from negative topics, right? So you've probably like met, a guy where wherever he travels to, wherever he goes, he always picks up like the negative things. And usually that brings down the vibe of the date, right? When you're just talking about negative. Obviously you're not like that, but it's just one thing to remember. Like, for example, we just come from London, the weather wasn't great in London, right? And then if you're on the date just talking about that, right, she doesn't know you yet that well. So if you talk about negative, now she amplifies that, right? She's like, oh, well, maybe this guy just always talks about this negative stuff. Like, do I really want to be a part of someone's life who all they see is the negative, right? So this is why it's important to stick to positive topics, right? Always talk about positivity, right? About, any city in the world, wherever you've been, especially your hometown. You always have to pick up your hometown. And positive topics include traveling, right? Adventurous things she's done, adventurous things you've done. What her dream, city is in the world. These are good questions to ask. Like, if she could live anywhere in the world, where would she live? What's the craziest thing she's done, right? Maybe talk about how she's very spontaneous because you took her on an instant date or something she did. Yeah, so you want to encourage her to go on this adventure with you, because that's what it is, right? You've just, approached her, whether, in the mall or in a coffee shop, and she's come on a date with you, she's gone on this adventure, right? And you want to kind of encourage that. And this is why it's important to talk about these type of topics, right? But talking about her hobbies is also really good. You probably have done that in the approach because, that's something that we always say to do. But it might have been surface material. So you can go a bit more deeper, like, oh, why did you do tennis when you were younger? Like, how did you get into that? And that actually brings us to the next thing, going into a little bit more deeper than you did in the initial approach. You want to go a bit more deeper, like, oh, what was it like growing up in Siberia, right? What was it like, being in a family with like, two sisters or whatever? Like, oh, what was it like being in a family where you don't have any siblings? And just encourage her to kind of talk about, her childhood, and you obviously you can talk about yours as well, like, oh, I grew up here, and show a bit of vulnerability. Maybe you say something, oh yeah, I struggled when I was younger because when I was in school, this guy, bullied me, or maybe not even that, but I mean, everyone got bullied when they were younger, right? Especially like, when you go into secondary school and you're the youngest one, and then you know, like the older kids always bully the younger kids, don't they? So that's something I would talk about. It's totally fine to show vulnerability. If anything, it makes you stronger. You know, like a superhero character, they always have a vulnerability. They always have a weakness, right? So this actually shows that you're, in any way, you're stronger. Like, you know, you're, and obviously for women, it's important to show that you have that kind of mental strength, right? But yeah, in terms of connection, so you go a bit deeper. That's the most important thing on a date, right? It's to build that connection, and not in a, you know, in like a forceful way, but in a natural way where you get to know her. Because that's the end of the day, that's why you're on a date with her, right? Because you like her. You want to get to know her, right? Obviously, you want the result at the end of it. That's the main reason you're on the date. But you know, I always enjoy getting to know people as well, just like their background, culture, right? And then now, this brings us to the next stage, which is the man to woman. So first, you've got that deep comfort and like deep rapport, and like, oh yeah, what was it like growing up in, you know, in Lebanon, and you know how must have been tough for you, you know, living in a boarding school or whatever. And then, after you move away from that, you go into the man to woman topics, right? One thing I do have to say here is this is going to take quite a while to get to know her, and you don't want to do it too quickly. You don't want to be like, you know, oh yeah, how are you? You okay? Okay, so so what was it like growing up in, right? So it's not like a therapy session. So you don't want to go into the deep stuff too quickly, because then it's kind of like, oh, this is a bit odd. So this is, I'm just going to mention this because, you know, some people watching this, they might be quite new to the whole, you know, date scene. They might not have a lot of experiences. So what you want to do first is do the chit chat stuff. You know, like how was your day, surface material, and then slowly go into the more deeper stuff, right? Then what was I going to say? Yeah, so that's in the first venue. That's like, you know, let's say in a coffee shop. Ideally, yeah, as I mentioned, sitting 90 degrees or side by side. Sometimes even opposite, you can get by, because you're not going to be there for the whole time anyway. You know, you're not going to be there for like 5 hours. And I've done it before where, you know, I go into my favorite coffee shop and the side by sides are all taken. So then I go sit in an opposite one, but I don't want to stay there for too long. I would suggest probably 45 minutes at max in the first venue. Now, if it's a really good venue like the one you went to the other day, you could even stay there an hour and a half is pushing it, but you could still do that. Any more than that, then it starts to get boring. Because what happens is, you know, in a venue, after a while, then it's kind of like the same thing. Whereas what you want to do is change the environment, right? Let the environment work for you. Like imagine right now we're sitting here, right next to the fountain. So you're in the Fashion Avenue, you're in that coffee shop there, then you come out, you sit here next to the fountain. Now you've just changed the scenery, and you probably know that, you know, psychologists say when you change the background, you feel like you know the person longer, right? So as the background is changing, she's kind of like getting to know you even better, right? So she feels like she knows you for longer, which is really important for comfort, right? Because imagine you've been on a date with her three times. Like imagine you went on 3 dates with her, or you went on 1 date with her. Which one's better? Obviously the 3 days. So if you change the venue 3 times, you've kind of done that, but in 1 date. So she feels like she knows you for longer. Like I remember, like I went on a date with this girl, and at the end of it, she was like, oh, I feel like I know you for a year. Because we did that. We also did the walking one, which I know you like as well. So you could do that. Go on a long walk, especially, you know, in Dubai, the weather's incredible. You do a walk. That's actually, the walk is one of my favorites because not only the background's constantly changing, so it's good, but it's also, I really like that vibe of like walking and getting to know someone. And also, it's quite a chill vibe. You know, as I said, you're not sitting opposite where you're just staring at each other and you're like, you constantly feel like you need to entertain her, but it's just like, you can even not say anything, just walk, maybe talk about the environment. Oh, look at that, you know, palm tree over there. Oh, what do you think of that restaurant? Gives you more topics to talk about as well when you walk around. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just constantly changing the scenery, not just staying in one place for too long. Okay. So the question is how to change the scenery when the weather's not great. So yeah, with that, obviously you can't walk outside. So I would just choose venues where they're indoors. Maybe do 3 venues instead of 2. Let's say you're with her for 4 or 5 hours, you could easily fit 3 venues in there, right? So you've got the coffee shop in the beginning, or the, you know, kind of like something like this, which is between a restaurant and a bar or a coffee shop. That one's the first one. Then the second one could be kind of a cocktail place, right? So you go to a more low lit. That's really important, like a low romantic lighting for the second venue. Or if you're gonna do 3 venues, you could do that at the end, right? Like I always get hungry on dates, so you might want to do a quick snack or food right in between. So you might do, you know, the tea in the first, then you take it to a restaurant, right? And then you go to a cocktail bar, where that's where you're gonna do the man to woman stuff, right? Now, I would recommend here, if someone's watching that they're very new to the dating scene, restaurant is a little bit harder than like a bar, for example, right? If someone watching is quite, you know, they're more into, yeah, if they want to drink alcohol, that's obviously good as well because it kind of gets rid of the nerves. If you're really new, obviously you're experienced, but if someone's watching, if you have alcohol, that will help to get rid of the nerves. And for the girl as well, I feel like, you know, if she's shy or something like that, alcohol is always good. Now, I don't really drink on dates anymore, just because I'm all about that healthy lifestyle. And if you're going on a lot of dates, it's not a healthy thing to be doing, right? If you're just, like you went on quite a lot of dates, and if you imagine you just drank like 2 drinks per day, that's not something that you would keep up, you know, for years. And it's not healthy, and also the price, you know, if you drink a lot of alcohol, it's expensive as well. So, but of course alcohol helps because it's kind of like a social thing to do, isn't it? So yeah, I'll probably say bar is good if someone's new and they want to start learning the whole dating stuff. But someone who's a bit more experienced, yeah. So you do what I said, you go for that tea or whatever in the beginning, or, you know, some kind of soft drink. Then you go for the restaurant, or you could do drinks first as well. You could go to a place with drinks first, and then you do restaurant. And then after restaurant, you go to that seduction location, you know, the low lit, a little bit more private bar where it's not packed with people. So, you know, if you want to escalate, it's not going to be like people just watching you, right? Yeah, so that's for in terms of the venues. And in the restaurant, what I would recommend is don't go too high end, because, you know, it might be tempting because you're like, oh yeah, I want to impress her and take her to a really nice place. But the problem with that is every guy does that. Like every guy is going to be like, oh, let me take her to, you know, the best restaurant because I want to impress her. But they can see through that, right? Like I remember I did this one on an instant date with this girl in London, and I took her to a really like high-end place. And then I can't remember how it came up, but she was like, oh yeah, you're trying to impress me, right? And because every guy's doing it, especially if she's super hot, right? Yeah, if she's not that hot, she might have not had it before. But you know, you're going for the top quality, and with the top quality, she's probably had it before, where guys, you know, taking her to like the best restaurant in Dubai or in London just to impress her. And what happens in these restaurants, because it's such a formal vibe, it kills that romantic kind of connection, right? So I'd rather take it somewhere casual, where you know, you take away the whole formal stuff, and then you can actually connect with her really well. And the thing about in the restaurant, you might not even be talking for that long, but what I've noticed is when you just sit with someone and you eat, right? Yeah, I wouldn't even force the conversation too much. That's not what the restaurant's about. The restaurant's more about, like, you know, with your family, where you just sit and eat, and it's like, you know, it's quite nice, like, just to have food with your family or your friend, right? Maybe you're not even like talking that much, but it's more like what we call the power of time. So with the power of time is when you spend time with someone, you trust them more, right? The more you spend time with someone, the more you trust them. And oh bro, she checked me out, man. I'm gonna go. That's the same girl. Excuse me. Hi. I had a bet with my friend that you're Persian. Iranian. Yeah, you have the most Iranian look ever. English or not? Little.
Where are you from?
Yes.
From?
I'm from Japan. Yeah, so we were talking about the spikes, right? It's really important that the date doesn't get too boring, because this is another sticking point where guys go on a date and it's kind of like this friend zone type of conversation, right? What you want to do is create a bit of tension, and it's kind of like, imagine you got you know, imagine a heart rate, right? You got just this like flat, right? It's just like a flat, I don't know, like when you're lying down or something, right? Your heart rate is just kind of flat, it's relaxing. But let's say if, you know, now if you saw an absolute stunner, what's gonna happen is your heart rate might jump up a little bit, right? So it's like a spike of emotion, right? This is what you wanna do on the date. You wanna spike the emotions by potentially saying something funny, like a joke, or maybe something that she didn't expect, like what you said the other time on the date when she goes, oh, I think you guys were talking about what type of guys, or what guys think, or something like that, and then you went money and sex, right? And it was just like out of nowhere, but it's obviously true, but no one would really say it. So I think this is something good on the date, to spike it, you know, say something she didn't expect. And instead of just, you know, being like safe, you want to take risks. This is what I say to all my clients. Make sure that you know, you kind of say something that she doesn't expect, because it's a bit of a risk, right? You would say it to your best friend because you know that, oh, like you could say anything you want to your best friend, right? But you won't say it on a date because you're trying to be safe. You're trying to be on the safe side, like, oh no, I don't want to fuck this date up, because, you know, what happens if she doesn't like me, then I can't get another date or something. This is what a lot of guys think, right? So when you take risks and when you don't really care about the outcome, you're more likely to say something like that, right? Just like you would say to your best friend. So when you do that, it kind of breaks the whole formal date thing. You know, the last thing you want to do is go on a date and it's kind of like this formal vibe, right? As I mentioned with the seating, you don't want it to have formal, to sit opposite, but also in your body language, in the words you say. You don't want to have that formal. You just want to treat it like she's your girlfriend. I think this is a really good way to see it, because if she's your girlfriend, you're not going to be putting a filter, because you already won her over. You know, she's your girlfriend now, and you're just being you around her. So yeah, this is a great mindset to have. Is she's already your girlfriend, and you know you got nothing to prove to her, but you guys are just. Well, I mean, if she was your girlfriend, you're not going to get to know her because you already know her. But the mindset is she's already your girlfriend, but you still obviously need to get to know her and do all this stuff, right? And then the other mindset, which Dan told me about, which is he's one of his favorite, is this is a girl that's going to fall in love with me, right? This is a mindset that I really love. I mean, you could use this in any part of the interaction. In the beginning. At the end, I mean, not when you're gonna dump her, but on the day, you know, when you're dating her, is like she's falling in love with you, right? And what this does is it puts you in this more cocky, funny, this cocky frame, right? This is something that I like to do as well. Like on dates, be like, oh, have you ever been on a date with a handsome guy before, or say stuff like that. Like you come across a little bit more cocky. This is good as well, like to spike it. So yeah, the point of the spike is to get out of this this chit chat mode, because you will get into that a little bit on the date, because most of the day is going to be getting to know her getting to know you. So that is a little bit like flatline, and that's why it's important every now and then, boom, you bring it up, right? And one of the best ways to do that is escalation appropriately. And the best way to do escalation is to start off with a low risk, right? Like the last thing you want to do is you're talking about politics and then you go in for the kiss. So you start off with something low key, like imagine she's sitting next to you and you go, oh, let me see your hand. Like let's compare tans. Let's compare tans. Let's see who's got more tan, or let's compare hand sizes. These are really low risk stuff. Or let me see your jewelry. Any excuse to really get a touch. And in the beginning, it doesn't even need to be sexual, right? You can start off like the way you would touch your best friend. Like, you know, maybe as you emphasize the point, you touch her leg, and you're getting her used to your touch, right? And I said this before as well. When you're walking on traffic lights, make sure you put your hand around her, make sure she's feeling safe, right? This is proven by psychology that when you do this kind of stuff, like opening doors for her. I remember I was reading this article. It was written that if you open a door for your date, or if you open the car door, and all this stuff, it's very small, but to her, what it's saying is, if I have offspring with this guy, he's going to take care of it. Right, so it's kind of like this evolution thing, and of course she'd rather choose a guy who is going to take care of her offspring, because yeah, she's not consciously thinking of that, but it's all, dating is more of this like this animal brain, this emotional brain that controls the decision making. And then yeah, so we were talking about escalation. Now you're in the third venue, or the second venue. If you want to do two venues, you're in a more romantic environment. I mean, this place is actually quite good, right? Where we are, it's not as low lit, but it's kind of like private, so there's not too many people around. So this is quite a good place, and you can start to escalate a little bit more. And as I said, you start something small, and then if she likes it, then you increase it. If she likes it, you increase it. If she doesn't like it, then obviously you can't go any further, right? So what you got to do is, maybe you just made a mistake, maybe you misread the situation, then you got to take a step back, not escalate, and just keep doing what you were doing before, and then you could go again, right? Some girls could be testing you, but if you go really small, I've never had a girl, like if I go like, oh, let's compare hand sizes, she goes no, like, that's quite it's good, like a basic escalation. I'm talking more about if you go for the kiss or something, sometimes they turn their head, right? So they give you the cheek. Like let's say if you get to that point and that happens, then take a step back, don't let it affect you. So that's actually something she's going to be looking at. It's like, oh, I rejected him, but let's see how he gets affected, right? If you like you're butthurt and you're like super sad because she rejected you, well, obviously she's going to be like, this guy doesn't have abundance. So when you do an escalation and it doesn't go well, then don't get affected. You know, she's going to be testing you to see how strong you are, to see how strong your frame is. Just take a step back, keep doing what you were doing before, and then after 15 minutes or so, then you can go again. Right now, having said that, if she's completely uncomfortable, then I might even call it out. Right. So if she's uncomfortable, you might want to say, "Oh, sorry, I'm Persian. We're quite direct, right?" So if it gets to that level, but on the days I've been on, it's never got to that level because I usually do it calibrated. So I usually go small and then slowly. So at any point, if she's uncomfortable, then I will be able to tell, right? This will only happen if you go from like 0 to 50. Let's say 50 is a kiss and 100 is taking her home. If you go from, as I said, like just talking about some random topic and then going for the kiss, you might get that. But if you're doing it slowly, it's unlikely for it to happen because then you will know, right? Like let's say if you do a hand holding or something, and then you feel like, oh, she's not really into it. Well, you just take your hand away, and then you escalate later when she's more comfortable with it. That's what I was trying to say, right? And yeah, so escalation is really important because the power of touch, like the human touch, is so strong that there's nothing you could do like verbally that will have the same power as that, right? It's kind of like that familiarity, like with your family, like you're used to touching your family, you're used to touching your best friend, like, so that's why the power of the touch is so important, and you want to get her comfortable with that. So yeah, when you get her used to your touch, and when you, like, let's say you hold hands or something as you're walking, it creates this emotion inside of her, this like emotional bond, which you can't change that with anything else. And as I mentioned, you don't need to do anything significant. Even a small bit of touch is good. And also she knows that, okay, this is a date, right? She knows that, this is not a friend to friend conversation, so that's another thing about escalation. There's quite a few things that it shows, like you're a risk taker, because just doing escalation is a bit of a risk. A lot of guys are not willing to do it because they don't want to get rejected. It's the familiarity, it's got that emotional bond. What was the other one I was going to say? Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So she obviously knows that this is a date, right? So there's so many benefits of the physical touch. So now you're in the the second venue, the third venue, and you've done the escalation. It's going really well, and let's say you can't go to your apartment and go to her apartment for logistical reasons. Now what I would do is finish it. What you don't want to do is over-escalate. You don't want to come across this like horny teenager in a bar or something. Well, obviously we're in Dubai right now, and I mean it's illegal to do that anyway, right? So here, probably keep the touch minimal. And I think like hand holding and stuff like that is fine, isn't it? So let's say, okay, you're in London or in Europe, even there I wouldn't overdo it, because it's kind of like, oh, this guy is, he's a bit too desperate. So that's another thing I was going to say with touch as well. Just like before, what I mentioned is on and off, you want to do that with touch. You don't want to just be like, oh, like grabbing her and stuff, and then just like, fully on throughout the whole day. You want to, maybe you go for the hand or something, then you just conversation, maybe you pull back a little bit, then you go in again, maybe you get proximity. Proximity is really good. Maybe you whisper in the ear something, oh, look at that girl over there, like, that girl just got approached by that guy, right? Maybe you whisper in the ear, then you come back. The proximity stuff is really good. Sexual eye contact, as I've said this before, in interaction, obviously, like the initial interaction, sexual eye contact is powerful, but on a date too, right? Again, you don't want to be like just staring at her for like an hour, right? You want to, have that sexual eye contact, maybe a pause, maybe you don't say anything. This is actually something that I always introduce into my dates, is, when the conversation naturally dies, instead of just like looking somewhere else. I mean, that's good to do as well, to take the pressure off. But what I tend to do is just eye contact, and then you kind of do like this laser sexual eye contact, right? And maybe you have a cheeky smile, like a flirtatious smile, and that just increases that sexual tension, right? You're not even escalating or anything physically, but it's just so good. So eye contact is great, especially when you're close as well. Like if you're close, it's even better. It's that man to woman kind of vibe. And yeah, it's definitely something that you should add to your dates as well. All right, now what you want to do is finish the day on a high point, right? So yeah, I think the best way to do that is just be like, well, listen, I've got to go, whatever, I've got to meet a friend, or I've got to wake up early. And then don't say anything like, oh, I'll message you tomorrow, I'm going to message you, or anything like that, right? Just leave it kind of in this, like in a mystery way. Like, is he going to text me? Is he not going to text me? Did it go well? Did it not go well? Right? Yeah, again, you don't want to keep it formal. Oh, it was nice spending time with you. Oh, it was, you don't want to say that in person. Oh, like, I really enjoyed hanging out with you. Actually, one thing I forgot to say is you want to qualify her on the date, right? You want to qualify her. If you haven't already done that in the initial approach or in the instant date, you do want to qualify her. It's really important. And the way I would do that is you would say something like, oh yeah, before I came up to you to approach you, like I was expecting like completely something for you to be like a different person, but now that I get to know you, like you've got this really good energy, right? You've got this like vibe that is kind of not unusual, but I would say it's kind of rare in Dubai, right? Something in that, not exactly those lines, but something where you qualify her in terms of her personality, not her looks, right? Maybe you would do it in the conversation when she goes, oh yeah, I moved to Dubai at the age of 19 without knowing anyone. And you go, oh, that's really adventurous. Not many girls would do that, move to Dubai at the age of whatever, 19, 20. So you must be quite a, adventurous person, right? Or maybe not even that was a bit too much, but I would just be like, oh, so that's quite adventurous what you did. Must have been tough for you to come here with your family at the age of 20, or by yourself at the age of 20, right? So that would be even better, I would say, if you do it within the conversation somehow. But if you can't, then do this like more scripted way where you say, I mean, you probably like her energy, that's why you're on a date with her. So I'd actually say that. I'd be like, start off with, oh yeah, before I was going to approach you, like, I thought you'd be like a completely different person, but now that I get to know you, you actually got a really good energy, right? And again, yeah, you don't need to say those lines, but somewhere in that kind of thing. It's like, before I approached you, I thought you were like this, but now, I like this thing about you. And maybe don't say it directly, I like this about you, but just be like, oh yeah, your energy is quite good, or, you're more interesting than, a lot of girls I've been on a date with. And that might be actually too much. You don't want to put it on a pedestal as well. So I usually say the energy thing, but I'm sure you can come up with something to use on your dates. Yeah, so finish at a high point, and that means, when the conversation is going well, when, let's say you were escalating on something and she was really into it, and then you finish it right there, right? What you don't want to do is it goes really well, and then you extend it for like another an hour, right? Let's say it's, I don't know, like 3-4 hours into date now, and you can't, you know, as I mentioned, you can't take it back to your apartment, or you can't, you know, you can't take that next step, and you just extend it for no reason, right? There should always be a strategy behind what you're doing. So if you're going to finish at a high point, and yeah, don't finish it like a formal way. I'd probably do like a kiss on the cheek, or you could even go for the kiss as well, right? If that's something you want to do, and if, you know, you're in an appropriate place, then you could even go for the kiss. And yeah, I wouldn't even say the kiss is a big thing. I think what a lot of guys do, they put too much emphasis on the kiss. Everyone's like, oh, I got the kiss. It's like it's game over, like she's your wife or something, right? The kiss is not even that important. It's more, you know, that romantic connection and escalation in like the form of, you know, holding a hand, or that's actually the most important part, right? Just getting the kiss doesn't mean anything really. It's like getting a girl's number. It doesn't mean you're going to see her again, right? And I feel like some guys, they just put too much importance in the kiss. So the kiss is not even that big of a thing, but it's more about that tension, the sexual energy, you know, the seduction energy, that kind of thing that we were talking about. So yeah, if you do want to go for the kiss, and it doesn't even matter if you get the kiss, and what you shouldn't do is leave it for right at the end. You know, when you're about to say goodbye, like she's getting a taxi or something, then you just go for the kiss. Like, that's what you don't want to do, like in the movies. You want to do it in that final venue, you know, the second or the third venue. That's when you really want to do it, as you're building up the escalation. So as I said, you go from 0 to like 10, which is holding hands something, then 20, getting closer, maybe you whisper in ear something, then 30, that could be, you know, maybe you give a kiss on the cheek or something, then 40 would be, you go in, get closer to her, like you're going for the kiss, but you don't actually go for the kiss, then you come back, right, just to test to see what happens. And then when all the signs are positive, then you go for the kiss, right? Because that way you're kind of guaranteeing that the kiss is going to happen, right? So that's what I would do. And if you don't get the kiss, remember, you know, you could even joke around and be like, well, it's the man's job to try, right? You could even say, I don't usually say that, but I have seen guys use that and it works really well. Or you could just be like, oh, well, you know, it's fine, I'm going to try in 10 minutes anyway. Or I'm just gonna go grab that drink, but when I'm back, I'm gonna try to kiss you again, right? You could joke and say something like that. But anyway, the point is that if she doesn't want to give you the kiss, then it's just like, it doesn't make a difference for you, right? It hasn't affected you one bit. Yeah, and then next time we can talk about texting as well, like after the first date, what you should say. But what I usually say, the next day, I would say, hey, one line. The next line I would say hey, and then I'll say I enjoyed our time last night, right? And then a smiley face. This is what I usually say. Now you can say it in different ways, but that's basically what you're going to say the next day. And it's important to message her the next day, because as I said, she's kind of like, you know, your girlfriend now in a way. So you have to treat her like that on texting as well. You have to keep in touch regularly. Now, I don't mean like, you know, flood her with messages, with like needy messages. You know, some guys might do that. But I'm just talking about high value, low investment, just like pings, stuff like that, right? But you do want to keep in touch every day. It's fine to keep in touch once every 2 days as well. But you do want to increase the intensity of the texts after the date. And yeah, keep in touch regularly until you go for the second day. All right, so that's it for first day. So if you've got any questions on that, go to the comment section now, write exactly what your sticking point is, and I'll make a video on that. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, baby. And if you want me to coach you in Dubai or anywhere around the world, go to the description, get on a call with me, and on that call we can actually discuss how we can take your game to the next level. I'll catch you in the next video, bro. Nav.